But Ruth and Naomi were at a point of taking that leap of faith. And if they wanted to survive, then they had to take a risk. Because as we've been looking at, and I've told you through this series that in Israel, the law was there to help provide for widows. And so now you have two widows. One is an Israelite, the other one is not. But the risk they were taking that we're going to look at today was a very bold one. Naomi had an idea for Ruth. And there's a proposition. But Ruth had to be willing to take this leap of faith. And Ruth could have been risking everything by doing this. So let's look at Ruth chapter 3, like I said. Not Esther, Ruth. And the first thing we're looking at is this idea of a bold proposal. So in Ruth chapter 3, verses 1 through 10, this is what is recorded here. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I'll do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." So let's stop there. In our modern eyes, this is a little bit odd. You have this woman who comes and uncovers the feet of Boaz. Okay, so it's just his feet, okay? Uncovers his feet and puts the blanket over her, and she lays there, and then, he wakes up in the middle of the night and sees this woman there. It's like, who the heck are you? And it's dark. He doesn't recognize her, obviously. It's not like you have city lights anywhere. There's no electricity. But this is a risky proposition, and I'm going to explain what this means as we look at a couple of places in Scripture. But Naomi knew that Boaz was related to her family. She also knew that what the law said about a redeemer, a kinsman redeemer. So I'm going to look at a couple of places to give you some kind of background on what this idea of a kinsman redeemer is. In Leviticus 25, verse 25, this is what the law says, and this is what Naomi would understand and know. So Leviticus 25, verse 25 says this: "If one of your fellow Israelites becomes poor and sells some of their property, their nearest relative is to come and redeem what they have sold." So if somebody could not, afford to keep their property, then the nearest relative would be able to redeem that property. That was put there in the law because God wanted families to stay together. He wanted families to be able to maintain. He wanted the names of families to carry on. Another place to look at, to give us a little bit more background on this, is Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 5. This is what it says in Deuteronomy. "If brothers are living together, one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her." And this was there because the first child born, the first son born, would carry on the name of the dead brother. And again, this was God's way of saying, let's preserve family. Let's preserve memory. Let's preserve legacy. Let us not forget those who have gone before us. And so Naomi knew this. She understood this, and she knew Boaz was a kinsman redeemer. But Naomi's plan was risky for a few reasons. Basically, what Ruth was doing when she lay at the feet of Boaz was proposing marriage to him. It's very modern. She's a very modern woman, right? She's proposing marriage to Boaz. That was that act. So Boaz knew exactly what she was doing. He wakes up and goes, who are you? What are you doing? He knew exactly what she was doing. Now, this may sound weird to us. I know you do see it sometimes today where women propose to the guys, and when I see that, I'm like, guys, come on, man. Get with the program here. What are you waiting for? But it's actually, there has been times throughout history where women have proposed. It's been rare, but it has happened. Queen Margaret of Scotland was said to have passed a law in 1299 that allowed women to propose every February 29th. And if the man refused, he had to pay a fine of a new gown, glove, or a kiss. So, think about that. There was a law in 1299 that if the guy refused, he had to pay up. Only on February 29th, so every 4 years. Once every 4 years. But Naomi wanted Ruth to make herself available to Boaz. Boaz did not force himself upon Ruth, even offer to be her husband, possibly because Ruth was still in mourning. She could have been still wearing mourning clothes or mourning garments as she was working in the field. So Boaz did not force himself, did not approach her to say, let's get married, I want to redeem you, or anything like that. Ancient women would wear garments of mourning and go through a period of mourning when they became widows. And we're not sure how long that mourning period lasted, but Naomi was possibly telling Ruth, your time of mourning is done, it's time to move on now. It's time for you to be provided for. The proposal was risky also because it could be perceived the wrong way as well. Remember that Ruth was from Moab. She was not an Israelite. For her to go and lay at the feet of Boaz could be seen as an act that prostitutes do. So she could be perceived as prostituting herself to Boaz, maybe to get a little bit extra help for her and Naomi. Boaz was startled when he saw Ruth because obviously he didn't expect her, and also he was a man of integrity. He didn't want that to be perceived as something it wasn't. He didn't want to take advantage of Ruth, nor take advantage of any proposition that she was making out of desperation or any other reason. This proposal is bold and courageous, and Ruth approached Boaz not knowing how he would react. It's not, maybe Naomi and Ruth had an idea Boaz is a good man. He may react in a positive way, but there wasn't 100% certainty. Because he could have reacted in a different way. He could have seen that as, what are you doing? You're trying to ruin my character, ruin my integrity, ruin my reputation. You need to leave. You need to get out of my fields. You and Naomi can go on your own life and get away from me. He could have reacted that way. They didn't know. So they're making this bold proposal to see what would happen. They're taking that leap of faith, trusting in God that God would take care of them. Here's the implication for us. I think we should follow the example of these ancient women. Their plan was bold. It was risky. It could carry with it serious repercussions for them if taken the wrong way, but they went through it anyway. They took a bold leap of faith. There's a story in Matthew 15 where a woman, again, another woman here, right? A woman comes to Jesus. She was a Syrophoenician woman, a Gentile, a non-Jewish woman. And she comes to Jesus. And this is what we're going to look at. If you look at Matthew 15, verses 21 through 28, I want to read this story because I think it's a very interesting story. I've referenced this story in the past as well. And it's a bold proposition that this woman is making to the King of Kings, to the Lord of Lords, the Son of God. Picking up in verse 21, it says this: leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David." Now, you need to pay attention to that, how she referenced him. There were some in Israel that didn't call Jesus Son of David. And what she was saying was, you are the Messiah. You are the promised one. You are God. She said, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. The disciples are annoyed because they're saying, this is a Canaanite woman. We don't need to be around her. She's going to make us unclean. We won't be able to go to the temple because of her. She's annoying. Send her away. And I think it's interesting that Jesus doesn't answer right away because I think he wants to see how the disciples are going to react. He wants to know what's in their hearts. Verse 24, he answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted, and her daughter was healed at that moment. Now, some will look at this and say, well, yeah, Jesus got put in his place a little bit. He called her a dog and then realized, oh, she's not a dog. I've actually heard this taught before, this interpretation. I don't think you got that one right. Here's what's going on. This woman would be considered a dog by the Israelites. Those disciples sitting with Jesus who were urging him to send her away were probably thinking to themselves, send this dog away. She is not worthy of coming to Jesus. And so Jesus, by saying this, was calling out probably his disciples. And then she said, yes, even the dogs eat the crumbs. She said, yes, but I'll just take whatever crumbs are left over. That's enough. Because if you notice what the disciples and the Israelites, what they wanted from Jesus, Jesus would do these miracles and they would say, what else you got? That's not good enough. What authority do you have to do these things? What else do you have? And this woman, who is a non-Israelite, a dog to the Israelites, to God's chosen people, right? She says, I'll take whatever you give me. And that's enough. Because you are the Son of David. Even a drop of your mercy is good enough. This woman risked everything. She risked everything for her daughter. Sound familiar? Naomi was risking a lot, probably everything, for her daughter. She took the leap of faith and said, God, just help us. Because even when Jesus said, hey, I can only give, you can't take what's given to the children, right? You can't take that bread. And then her answer was, help me. Ruth represents all of us because she boldly approaches the throne of grace, throwing herself at the mercy of her Redeemer in hopes that he would find it in his heart to redeem her. That's how Jesus wants us to come to him. He wants us to boldly approach the throne of grace, throw ourselves at his feet, and just say, help me. And he says, of course. Of course I will. Jesus wants us to come boldly to him. He wants us to risk it all and throw ourselves at the feet of his mercy. He wants to redeem us so that he can turn our mourning into dancing. Let that sink in. Think about that. He wants to turn our mourning into dancing. Now, are we going to have periods of mourning while we're on this earth? Absolutely we are. Of course we are. But when we see Jesus face to face on the other side, that mourning will be turned into dancing. It won't matter anymore. Jesus wants us to approach him with whatever we have, even if it's nothing at all. Even if we have no energy, we have nothing to give, we don't even feel worthy of coming. Even if everybody else is saying they're not worthy to come to you. It's sad to think that there's still some who will say and be like the disciples and say, well, that dog is not worthy to come to Jesus. Guess what? Here's some truth for you to chew on. None of us are worthy to come to Jesus, but he doesn't care. None of us are worthy to come to Jesus. All of us are like the Canaanite woman. We are all like dogs who come to Jesus, just begging for crumbs. And Jesus says, I'll give you crumbs and I'll give you more. I'll give you a seat at the table of a king. We just have to come to him. We just have to come to him. And who is Jesus? Well, he is our perfect redeemer. And this is the second thing I want to look at, because I want to see how Boaz was this perfect redeemer for Ruth. If you go back to Ruth chapter 3, verses 11 through 18. This is continuing the story after, Boaz is startled out of his sleep. And he realizes what's going on. I'll read verse 11 again. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I'll do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. So what Boaz is referencing is that there was someone who was closer relation to Naomi than he was. And according to the law, it had to be the closest. So that's just so you know, just keep that in mind. And we'll explain that a little bit more here in a minute. Verse 13, stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, well, good. Let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor. He also said, bring me the shawl you were wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured it into it 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, how did it go, my daughter? Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens. For the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. So Boaz was still watching out for Ruth. He told his people, hey, no one needs to know. No one needs to know that there was a woman here last night. Because here's the thing, if somebody saw and the word spread, then Ruth could be in a lot of trouble. She could be seen as offering herself as almost a prostitute. And there was laws against that. She could be stoned to death because of that. So Boaz is like, hey, there's more going on than meets the eye here, so we're not going to tell that there was a woman here last night until I take care of things. Still watching over her, still caring for her. Boaz was willing to redeem Ruth. But again, being an upstanding man that he was, being a God-fearing man, following the law of God, he said, hey, there's somebody closer than me, and we have to make sure that if he's willing to do it and able to do it, then by all means, he's going to do it, and it's great. But if he refuses or if he's not willing, then I will definitely redeem you. Boaz was the perfect redeemer. He was willing to redeem. He was financially able to redeem, because not only would he take on Ruth, he would also take on Naomi, as well as any land that Naomi owned or was owned by her deceased husband. Boaz was also merciful and kind. He was willing to go above and beyond, and he showed this by giving Ruth a parting gift of barley for her. Like 6 measures. He said, here, open up your, make a little pouch here. Make a pouch, and I'm going to dump all this barley in. You take that home with you. Here's the great part of this story. Boaz points to Jesus as a better redeemer. Boaz was merciful and kind. He was willing. He was able to redeem Ruth. But it points to somebody greater. It points to Jesus as our great redeemer. And here's the great thing about this story. Because as we've been looking at, I said Ruth was from Moab, and we know that the history of Moab was, I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, that Moab came from Lot, who was Abraham's nephew, and Lot was with his daughters after Sodom and Gomorrah. If we want to put 2 and 2 together there. And so one of the kids that was born, Lot's grandson, was named Moab. Gave rise to the Moabites. And that's where Ruth comes from. But here's how Jesus can redeem anything. In Matthew chapter 1, verse 5, this is the genealogy of Jesus. And this is what is recorded here by Matthew. You know, Matthew being that tax collector, that hated guy. And I think Matthew could relate to this. Matthew being a guy who was hated by his own people. He had no home. He wasn't a Roman, so he didn't belong to the Romans. The Jews had rejected him, so he's kind of a man without a home. Nowhere to go. In search of a Redeemer. And Matthew, putting in the genealogy of Jesus, Matthew writing to a Jewish audience, writes this. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Maybe that rings a bell, right? Who was this Rahab person? Rahab was of Jericho. Not one of God's people. And guess what Rahab's job was? She was a prostitute. And she had 2 spies who came from the Israelites who Joshua was leading into the promised land. He sent 2 spies in. And Rahab says, I know you and I know your God and I know what he did to Egypt. I will help you. But make me this promise. You will spare me and my family. And they said, yes, we will. And then Rahab was the mother of Boaz. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. And Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. Jesus is such a powerful and great Redeemer that he not only redeems those who have come after him, he redeems those who came before him. Jesus is the perfect Redeemer because he does not care about where Ruth came from. He does not care how Ruth was perceived. He does not care about how she was defined by anyone else. All he cared about was that she came to the throne of grace, seeking mercy and seeking redemption. Jesus even said that the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. He came to give his life as a ransom for many. A ransom is something that is paid to redeem someone else. Jesus came to pay the ultimate price to redeem us. He came to ransom us from the grave by giving his life for us and rising again. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 1, this is what John the Apostle, this is what he writes. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. See what love the Father has lavished on us, that we can be called children of God. God has poured out his love on us so much that our status has changed. No longer are we Moabites. No longer are we Gentiles. No longer are we Israelites. No longer are we this or that or whatever else somebody wants to define us as. We are children of God because of his great love. Boaz giving Ruth the barley points to what Jesus would do for us in greater abundance. Boaz tells Ruth, here, give me your robe. Let's open it up. Let me pour out this barley for you to take care of you. It's more than enough. Jesus is more than enough. Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. Why do you think he walked around with our flesh on? Because he wanted to be like us. He became like us to be our kinsman so that he could redeem us from sin and death in order that we could live forever as true kinsmen of Jesus. The Israelites, they brought the animals to sacrifice over and over and over and over and over. That was never good enough because guess what? We're not animals. Jesus came not to be an animal. He came to be human. But also God too, because only God can show us that kind of mercy. The invitation into the family of God is open to all, regardless of status, background, your past, your sin. It doesn't matter. God wants a big family, and Jesus makes that a possibility. We just have to throw ourselves at the feet of our kinsman redeemer, who is more than willing to spread his wings over us. Look at Psalm 17, verse 8. This is what the psalmist writes. And I always love the imagery of God spreading his wings over us and God spreading out his arms over us. And this is the Psalm of King David, and this is what he writes. Keep me as the apple of your eye. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. This was David's prayer to God. He's like, keep me as the apple of your eye. Don't lose sight of me. Don't let me get lost in the shuffle. And hide me in the shadow of your wings. Here's a truth you have to understand. When you come to Jesus as Lord and Savior, you are not lost in the shuffle. You are not a number. It's not like going to the R&B where you get the number and you just sit there and wait. It's like the worst place on earth. God doesn't give you a number because he knows your name. The reason you get a number when you go to the R&B or anything like that, where you have to take the number, or you have to deli at the grocery store, because they don't know your name. They're going to call out your name. You got to take a number. When you come to Jesus, you don't get a number because he already knows your name. And he knows every hair on your head, or the ones that used to be there. He knows everything about you because he made you in his image. And he will keep you as the apple of his eye. He will hide you in the shadow of his wings. You just have to throw yourself at his feet. We have to be like Ruth and make that leap of faith, make that bold proposal, risking everything if we have to. Even if God says, I need you to leave everything behind. And if we're like the rich young ruler and he says, I need you to leave everything behind. I need you to sell everything you got. It's worth the risk. Because remember how that rich young ruler walked away? He didn't walk away happy. He walked away sad. But all those who left everything, they weren't sad. I mean, the disciples at one point were like, hey, we left everything for you. And Jesus says, I tell you the truth. Whoever has left everything will gain it back again in an abundance. The thing is, like, to follow Christ, to risk everything, to leave everything, to be bold like that, to take that leap of faith, not knowing what the outcome's going to be, it is always worth it. Always. You'll never, I know I've never followed Christ in anything and looked back and regretted it. Never look back and regret it. Even if the world came crashing down today, I'd still have Jesus. Make that bold proposal. Fall at the feet of your Redeemer, because he's the perfect Redeemer. He doesn't look at you as a number or as labels. He looks at you for who you are. He looks at you as one who has come begging for mercy, and he's more than willing to give it to you. And because of that great love and that great mercy, our status has changed. We are no longer the labels. We are no longer the numbers. We are children of God. Amen? Amen.